On today's show, we are going to discuss the most important usage nuggets from preseason week 2, as well as trade news, big trade today, injury news, depth chart news around the league, and most importantly, how all of this has affected our fantasy football rankings for drafts. Let's get into it here with news, reactions, and ranking changes. Big story, kind of out of left field. Well, maybe not out of left field. Some people had speculated about this. Commanders trade Jahan Dotson and a 5th-round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 3rd-round pick and 2 sevenths. My first thought was, man, the Commanders hate Jahan Dotson. They traded him in the division, got a little bit of draft capital back, but left themselves with very little behind. They just wanted to get rid of Jahan Dotson, did Cliff Kingsbury. So, Evan, what was your initial reaction to the trade? And then we'll get to the fantasy fallout.
Well, I like it when we see teams make in-division trades because for a long time, like teams were extremely resistant to that. And by resisting that, they would limit their market for their players. I mean, at the end of the day, like especially if you don't believe in a guy, like you should be willing to trade him to a division rival. And I also think that Jahan Dotson needed a change of scenery. I mean, he had worn his welcome there. He was very frustrated at the end of last season. There were some quiet whispers about his like work ethic concerns, but he at the end of the day he needed out of Washington. He was a 1st-round pick a couple years back. He's only 5'11", 184. They were trying to use him in the slot in Washington. I think that they'll try to use him in the slot in Philadelphia, just to give themselves another option because Johnny Wilson right now is running as the Eagles' 3rd receiver, and he is very intriguing. Like a tree-like specimen with incredible athleticism, but he's a 6th-round rookie. So they just needed another option there, and Jahan Dotson gives them that. He had been toward the end of the top 150. I'm going to pull him out, though. I mean, I don't think you can draft him.
So let's talk about the fallout for the Eagles first. Do you think Jahan Dotson upgrading on Johnny Wilson is enough for you to move a ranking on A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith or Dallas Goedert?
I don't think that this moves the needle almost whatsoever as it pertains to the other Eagles pass catchers. I don't see how it does.
Okay, so what we did in the top 300 rankings, we left A.J. Brown alone. We left Devonta Smith alone. We did put a little dock on Dallas Goedert just because we were already maybe a little bit too high on Dallas Goedert. And I do think Jahan Dotson can earn more targets at the expense of Goedert than Johnny Wilson did. So we did put a little dock on Goedert. The big dock that Kevin mentioned is on Jahan Dotson. We're down to 188 overall in full PPR on Jahan Dotson now. This is a guy that could only earn 14% of the targets while competing with total dust in Washington. Now he's competing with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. I'm skeptical that Dotson can earn targets. I do think that there's some positives here. Maybe Jahan Dotson now is an injury away from actually having a really good role. And obviously the offensive environment, I think, is way better in Philly. Maybe he can pop up for some spike weeks here and there. But overall, I do think it's a downgrade for Jahan Dotson, slight downgrade for Dallas Goedert. Again, we're leaving A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith alone. On the other side, Evan, in the Washington side, it is a mess. They have left themselves with stuff like Olamide Zaccheaus, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott. These are all guys that we gave bumps to of varying degrees. How do you think Washington plays out this season with seemingly real dust behind Terry McLaurin?
I think that Luke McCaffrey, the 3rd-round pick out of Rice, is the guy who probably benefits the most. All of a sudden, they may try to fast-track him because they have been slow-playing him to this point. He's kind of seemed buried on the depth chart, but we've heard independently that they are still really high on him, and maybe just easing him in as a rookie out of a lower-level football university. I think that he benefits the most probably in the longer term. Terry McLaurin, I would like to say that he might benefit, but he has run 26 of his 27 routes on one side of the field in Washington this preseason. Cliff Kingsbury is still like the only offensive play caller in the league who does that kind of a thing. That's the biggest concern for me regarding Terry McLaurin, not the absence or presence of a guy like Jahan Dotson.
We had to give Terry McLaurin a bump, up to around 50th overall, just on target share stuff. Like, the ball has to go somewhere. However, I have major concerns that Cliff Kingsbury is going to butcher this, just like completely butcher this, the whole thing. I like Luke McCaffrey. I think he'll probably start off the season a little bit slower than people want, but Luke McCaffrey would be the one I want for the long haul. In the shortish term, I mean, Kingsbury loves Zach Ertz, and like quarterbacks like throwing to Zach Ertz. I could see Zach Ertz having an annoying role early. We're up into the high 200s on Zach Ertz now. And yeah, if you're in 20th round stuff and you want to take a shot on De'Ami Brown, maybe you could. But Synod also, I think, is more interesting now, too. All those guys got bumps. You can check out all the rankings on the site. They're all
I agree.
updated.
I think Zach Ertz is going to catch an annoying amount of
Yeah.
passes.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to story number 2. Jaylen Warren pulled his hamstring. Now, initial reports on Jaylen Warren from Pelissero and Jordan Schultz were week 1 is uncertain. A few days ago, Mike Tomlin came out and said Jaylen Warren is probably out for this week, meaning the preseason game, but this is not anything that's a long-term concern. That's obviously somewhat vague, but it's at least a good sign on Jaylen Warren. Evan, how did you handle Jaylen Warren in the ranks, and how's this affected how much you want to draft Jaylen Warren?
Running back going into the season with a pre-existing hamstring injury is never comfortable, especially in a situation where I don't think he's going to catch many passes, even if he were at 100%. And that's a really big part of Jaylen Warren's game. So to me, I mean, he's going to end up on the shy away list at this point. And Najee Harris got a little bump up. I mean, Najee Harris, these running backs are inherited by Arthur Smith. And Arthur Smith is willing to put the ball in the belly of big backs. You think about how annoying Tyler Algier was last year. You think about Derrick Henry. I mean, Najee Harris could end up running for a ton of yards, and this can fast track him entering the season. Also, we shouldn't forget about Cordero Patterson, who's a player that Arthur Smith is comfortable giving the football to on a semi-regular basis, and he could fill that Jaylen Warren role early in the season. I don't want to draft Jaylen Warren at this point, which disappoints me because I love him as a player, but we don't know what Arthur Smith thinks of him as a player, and now he's hurt.
Yeah, I was pretty confident that Jaylen Warren was going to be in an even timeshare with Najee. So I don't want to overrate like week 1, week 2 stuff, but we definitely have docked Jaylen Warren a bunch. We're down to 98 overall on Jaylen Warren, and we're up at 64 overall in half PPR on Najee Harris. So yeah, certainly not ideal. Let's go to the third story. Deshaun Watson, general arm soreness on Wednesday, held out of team drills. Now, normally I wouldn't even think about this, right? Guys get tired, they get banged up. It's a long training camp, whatever. But I am so concerned about Deshaun Watson's shoulder. Hopefully you guys listened to the Stephania Bell episode. I'm just so worried that Deshaun Watson's shoulder is permanently messed up and it's not going to get right. And they have to keep trotting him out there because he makes $230 million guaranteed. So this is a scary one for me. Not just that maybe he won't play. I think he's going to play. It's that I think the reason that he's played poorly is not because he doesn't like football, because he was out for a year, because all the off-field stuff. I think it's just because his shoulder has been messed up ever since he got back. So, Evan, what do you think about Brown stuff right now? And I do want to note that if they did have to go away from Deshaun Watson, old friend Jameis Winston is waiting in the wings.
Yeah. I have major concerns about Deshaun Watson, even if he were at 100%. He's played 12 games over the past 3 seasons. When he's been in there, he hasn't looked the least bit comfortable. And now he's dealing with more arm problems, and they're trying to downplay it. And I get that. I'm still like hopeful that we see Jameis Winston by week 3 or week 4, because I think he could be a lot of fun with these weapons. The Browns, though, as a team, are really limping into the season. Denzel Ward suffered a concussion. That's his 5th career concussion. He's their best cornerback. Both of their tackles have been out in training camp so far. It's I don't know. They're limping into the season. Nick Chubb isn't going to be ready for a while, and with their quarterback at the forefront. I mean, there are serious questions about Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think in most outcomes, my feeling right now on Deshaun Watson is in most outcomes, it goes meh to sub-average. But there is still like a ceiling here with Nick Chubb out, going to a spread offense. They have really good weapons. Deshaun can still run a little bit. Like, if he can actually hit, I still think he can hit in a bigger way than guys who go around him do. Hit in a bigger way than Aaron Rodgers or Baker Mayfield or something like that. He can hit in a bigger way than that, but I'm getting more and more skeptical that he can actually hit in that way. Oh, and the Jameis stuff. Yeah. Like, for the Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy and Jerome Ford and everything else and Njoku, like going to Jameis would be awesome. Jameis in 2019, full-time starter, went absolutely nuts. 5,100 yards and 33 touchdowns for the Bucs through 30 interceptions also. He did have a starting stint with the Saints, which was not as fun, but that offense was a disaster. They had a bunch of idiots in the coaching staff. He still threw over 2 touchdowns per game. So
And
we'll
for as
see.
long as Deshaun Watson is sidelined, like Jameis Winston going to be taking the first team reps.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of a big deal. He's got this very charismatic personality. You know, players could rally around him. I mean, and then that can become a big factor in the locker room. I know that that's not, you know, hardcore data, you know, analysis, but I mean, that's something that could happen.
All right. Let's go to story number 4. Curtis Samuel has been diagnosed with turf toe. Curtis Samuel is now listed as week to week. Joe B had some thoughts that maybe it's not as severe as it could be. Still, never like the turf toe stuff. That is certainly can linger. Evan, how are you handling Bills wide receiver in the ranks in the wake of this?
And also Marquez Valdez-Scantling is out with a neck injury. So all of a sudden they're like real thin at receiver. I gave Khalil Shakir, I had given Khalil Shakir previously a very large bump. I moved him up a little bit more. He's a guy that I'm like trying to draft. We talked about on our draft targets, my favorite 10th round pick, and I'd be willing to reach for him at the middle to late 9th round. You know, it's gonna. I think that it also reaffirms that Mac Hollins, and people don't want to hear it, but Mac Hollins is going to end up playing a fairly big role. He's going to soak up a lot of snaps, at least. I don't think he's going to do a whole lot in the box score, but I think that he's going to play a lot. He's going to definitely get that role over that wind sprint role over MVS, I think. But for Curtis Samuel, who's like, you know, an agility-based, speed-based player dealing with a turf toe injury, that's not comfortable. He moved down the ranks.
The question about the Buffalo pass catching stuff all offseason, the answer has been the same for me all offseason. Just more Dalton Kincaid.
Yep.
Just every time, you know, give me more Dalton Kincaid. That's just been my answer to all this on Bill stuff.
Yeah. And Adam and I and Leone did an FFPC draft last night, $2,000 entry. We took Dalton Kincaid in what was in the mid to late second round.
Yeah, that's about his ADP in those tight end premium formats. But yeah, I was happy to get Dalton Kincaid there
tight end
in that
premium
format. Yep. All right. Story 5, DeAndre Hopkins, we talked about last week with this knee injury. Titans now say he's expected back for week 1. So we've given him a pretty decent boost back to almost where we had him. Not quite where we had him before the injury, but almost. Still, I don't feel like that comfortable about it because he's 32 years old, coming to the season with a knee injury, even if it sounds like he's going to be ready for week 1. Evan, what's your updated feeling on DeAndre Hopkins right now?
Speaking of that draft that we did, I think he lasted until the middle of the 9th round.
No one wants him right now.
No one wants him.
Yeah.
And that's even kind of like a boomer format where they might be more comfortable drafting, you know, an older receiver. But it looks like he's expected to be ready for week 1 now. I mean, this injury occurred pretty early in training camp, so he's going to end up with, you know, plenty of time to recover. He was by far, you look at, if you isolate Will Levis's passes last season, DeAndre Hopkins was far and away the most productive Titans pass catcher last season. I mean, obviously Will Levis has the best rapport with him, so I'm not sure that the missed time there is going to hurt him too much. But yeah, I mean, I moved him back up to a place where you can get him in drafts in the top 150.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you want DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm not like dying to take DeAndre Hopkins, if you want him though, you should be willing to wait because right now nobody really wants to touch this guy. His ADP in home league right now, we're still seeing 104 overall. I mean, I would take him at 104 overall for sure. But yeah, I certainly don't want to reach on DeAndre Hopkins right now. Story 6, the Las Vegas Raiders have made a decision. They have going with Mr. Gardner Minshew over Aiden O'Connell. Evan, I'm curious your thought. My initial thought was, I think this is better for the offense that they're going with Minshew over AOC, but I don't feel like strongly about that. I guess I have in my head, there were a lot of games I thought last year for the Colts, which is a much different setup, where Gardner Minshew got them into position to score fantasy points and to put up numbers. I didn't see that from AOC as much. But yeah, Evan, what was your reaction to Minshew over AOC for the Raiders?
I just think it's a horrible situation. Any way you slice it. Gardner Minshew was able to get the football to Michael Pittman with the Colts last year, but that was an RPO heavy, Shane Steichen coordinated attack.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Luke Getsy, who has never been impressive as a play caller or offensive designers. I think it's a situation where I don't think the Raiders, and you could build a case. Oh, they might have a good defense. They're going to play hard for Antonio Pierce. They have a really tough schedule. I think things could go by the wayside fairly quickly for the Raiders. And so I'm terrified to draft Devontae Adams. I moved him down just a couple of slots in the rankings, but he's now to wide receiver 17, where you're not going to get him. I'd rather have Jalen Waddle and Cooper Kupp for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. On the Minshew thing, the other thing that's in my head is Gardner Minshew made a spot start when he was with the Eagles. It was like fantasy championship week or like fantasy semifinal week in 2022 against the Cowboys. Minshew goes 24-40 for 355 yards and 2 touchdowns, backs that up the next week against the Saints, 18 of 32, 274 and 1. So he's put up numbers in systems that I just haven't seen from AOC. So I don't feel great about it, but I do think it's better Minshew over AOC. Agree with Evan, though. Right now, I would take Waddle and Kupp over.
It was kind of wild, though, that Antonio Pierce named Gardner Minshew the Raiders starter immediately after a preseason game where Gardner Minshew had played horribly.
Yeah.
It's just that Aiden O'Connell had looked even worse. I mean, they do not have a good option.
Okay. Speaking of quarterback options, I find this one so funny. Story 7 is that the Drake Maye is now getting buzzed to start week 1. It's so funny to me because, all offseason, everybody, all the Boston media, Jacoby Brissett, Drake Maye's not ready. Jacoby Brissett's going to start. This is what happens every single year with rookie quarterbacks. If you take a guy in the top 5, top 10, dude's got to play, man. I know Evan's talked about this before. Best way to learn is to get out there and play. I know other people disagree, but I definitely agree with Evan. And now that Drake Maye had one reasonable performance in a preseason game, every headline is like, oh, maybe Drake Maye should start week 1. Oh, Patriots are considering starting Drake Maye week 1. We always had Drake Maye projected to be starting the second half of the year, if not more, and thought he was a really interesting QB3 best ball pick because of his ability to run. Now he's going to start going a little bit higher. This is not really a take for redraft, I don't think, Evan, but for people in deeper or 2 QB formats, What are your updated thoughts on Drake Maye?
Yeah, and I think he could be a factor in best ball as well
100%.
down the stretch. Just Jacoby Brissett, has not run away with the starting job. Immediately after Drake Maye had that quality preseason game, they started giving him reps with the ones, which he had not received up until that point. The supporting cast is a major concern, but if they can't even trust Jacoby Brissett to play competently in this new offense under Alex Van Pelt, then they may as well play Drake Maye and just let him get out there and take his lumps. That's what the Bills did with Josh Allen, halfway through his rookie season. And, he's turned out pretty well. And the skill sets are pretty similar. I mean, Drake Maye is a big, powerfully built quarterback prospect with some ball placement concerns, but super aggressive, can do, awesome things as an athlete. Had really nice rushing production, actually better rushing production in college than did Josh Allen at Wyoming. So, that's an option to them now. If Drake Maye looks better than Jacoby Brissett, like, they should play Drake Maye.
100%.
And that's what it's been to this point.
100%. And yeah, the reason that Drake Maye projects reasonably well is because of the rushing stuff that Evan talked about. If you go back and watch him run in college, and you saw him run in the preseason too, it actually looks really good. My concern is that everybody's going to look bad when you're throwing to Pop Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, KJ Osborne, Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Polk. Like, it's going to be hard to look great no matter who you are when those are your weapons. But yeah. Let's go to story number 8. Ricky Pearsall, the round 1 pick of the 49ers, questionable for week 1. Some beat writer speculation he could be a healthy scratch. I only bring that up because the Ayuk stuff still isn't resolved. Like, I don't know what's going on here. It sounds like he's going back to San Francisco at this point. From what we've heard, it doesn't sound like the Washington stuff from today really has anything to do with Ayuk. So they're still trying to get a deal done. We're 2 weeks from the season. It's still not done. They could end up needing Ricky Pearsall if this drags into the regular season. I don't think that's going to happen, but at least at this point, it's possible. Evan, how are you handling Brandon Ayuk right now, and any Pearsall thoughts?
I feel like a jerk, but I'm going to correct you again on the pronunciation of Ricky Pearsall.
What did I say?
Not
Sale?
Ricky, it's not Ricky Parasail. Okay? It's Ricky Pearsall.
Pearsall. I said Pearsall.
You said Pearsall or something.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter. It's Pearsall. Okay, it's kind of like a famous football name. Anyways, I was reading Matt Mayako, who's covered the 49ers forever. I think Ricky Pearsall has gotten through like maybe one or two full practices all of camp. You know, Ryan, our producer, goes, "You've said Pearsall for 3 months." At this point, like, he's behind Brandon Ayuk. I think Brandon Ayuk is going to stay at this point.
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, like Ricky Pearsall is not in line to have any role to begin the season and may open the season on the inactives list. I mean, they couldn't even use him on special teams.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he'd be active in week 1.
If you were doing a draft today, where would you take Brandon Ayuk? His ADP has gone down into like the end of the 3rd round, or like middle of the 3rd round at this point.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Would you take Rashee Rice or Brandon Ayuk right now?
Real close. I think Rashee Rice probably.
Yeah, so I would normally have it Ayuk, I think, but given all the stuff that's going on around Ayuk, I did take Rashee Rice on the clock with that decision earlier today. So yeah, but I do think Brandon Ayuk in the 3rd round, like, they have to get this resolved. Let's go to story number 9. Kalif Raymond wins the wide receiver 3 job for the Lions, but Dan Campbell said that ideally Kalif Raymond only plays 20 or 25 snaps at wide receiver. They just don't have anyone else that has stepped up, Donovan Peoples-Jones or whoever else. So they're going to go with Kalif Raymond as their wide receiver 3, kind of because they're out of other options. They also want to use him as a returner, etc. I've tacked on Kalif Raymond to some Jared Goff stacks for best ball, but beyond that, to me, it's just another sign that Jameson Williams needs to eat, as do obviously their primary guys, Gibbs, ARSB, and Laporta. But yeah, Evan, any thoughts on Kalif Raymond winning the wide receiver 3 job for the Lions?
I think that he's not going to be, I think the biggest takeaway is that Jameson Williams is just locked in as number 2, because Kalif Raymond, although he can make some big plays. I mean, he can run. He's got, he's also a return man, and but he's 5'8", 170 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a very situational deep threat. And it's just, to me, another reminder that, like, Jameson Williams is locked in as number 2. Actually, in this draft that we've been talking about last night, we had the choice between DeAndre Hopkins and Jameson Williams. I was thinking DeAndre Hopkins. Adam guilt tripped me hard into going with Jameson Williams. What happened to you?
We got to have fun.
It was like,
we got to have fun. We can't be taking DeAndre Hopkins, 32-year-old with a hurt knee, over Waymo Jamo. We can't be doing that.
It's also a reminder that, hey, we play this game to have fun, and we want to have fun. We want to win, okay, but we want to win in a fun way.
Exactly. Story number 10, not fun. A lot of cut speculation around Dameon Pierce. It just seems like the Texans want this to happen for Dameon Pierce, but he just can't do it. Now, I can't believe they would cut him in favor of Cam Akers, who has 2 Achilles tears, Jawar Jordan, Dare Ogunbowale. That seems crazy to me, but it would be interesting if they trade or cut Dameon Pierce, because there's a lot of teams that don't have the run scheme that the Texans run, where maybe Dameon Pierce could actually be good. So, Evan, any updated thoughts on the Texans running back situation behind Joe Mixon here?
I just think that this is a team that is going to be looking to get rid of Dameon Pierce close to final cuts, and maybe looking at what hits the waiver wire at final cuts as well. I think it's just totally unresolved, the number 2 running back spot for the Texans. I mean, Dameon Pierce, I think, is based on his preseason performance, and apparently he hasn't looked good in training camp either. He got off to a decent start, but he's just completely fallen off a cliff. Like, he is unplayable in Bobby Slowick's running scheme.
Ugh, God, yeah. And I mean, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Bengals. I mean, there's certainly teams that could use running back help like Dameon Pierce out there. Let's get to some usage notes from week 2 preseason. The Giants starters played a full half. Devin Singletary, 29 of 33 snaps with the starters. Now, Tyrone Tracy did not play in this game, but Tyrone Tracy is back in practice. I still think that Devin Singletary is going to open the season as like one of the highest snap share running backs in the entire league, and he goes so late. Now, I get why he goes late because he's not going to be a big hit, right? He's not going to go off for 1,500 yards. There's not a lot of upside here. But I also don't think Devin Singletary is going to completely face plans. So, like, sometimes when I'm doing drafts and I'm real thin at running back, I just need some volume. I'll go for Devin Singletary there late. Evan, any thoughts on him and the Giants' backfield?
Well, that's Brian Daboll's boy. From Buffalo. And by the way, shout out to Brian Daboll. He's been looking slim and fit. He's been hitting that Ozempic or something. He's looking great out there at Giants camp. But Singletary, Tyrone Tracy has been out too, which that looked like a really scary injury when it happened. But apparently it's just a low ankle sprain. I think that he is still very much draftable. He's right on the fringes of the top 150. But yeah, I mean, look, they're going to come out the gate with Devin Singletary looking like as a potential every down back. I think at this point, it's just he doesn't, the offensive line, the offense as a whole, he's not really a home run hitter, but I mean, he's going to get a lot of playing time out of the gate for sure.
Yeah, and like we have him right next to Zamir White in the rankings, and like I think that's a fair comp for Devin Singletary somewhat. I do think that Devin Singletary is an example of a player I'd rather have in best ball than redraft. Like in redraft, like I'm trying to hit these guys that just go nuts, have tons of upside, and give me a dominant team. Whereas in best ball, 10 points a week can actually go a long way for me, just getting usable weeks out of him if he goes late enough. So that's kind of where I'm at there. Speaking of the preseason, Malik Nabers, my God, played a full half with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones threw it 18 times. Malik Nabers, 6 targets on those 18, 33% target share. For those guys who don't look at that stuff too much, 33% is like elite, would be like close to league leading target share, or maybe actually leading. And I kind of think that's going to be sticky to the regular season. So I know you've been super high on Nabers, Evan. I think the Daniel Jones haters were out in full force after that game on Saturday, but I don't think that did anything to dampen the Malik Nabers excitement. So any more thoughts on Giants pass game?
Well, Daniel Jones had like 2 or 3 extreme low light, highlight reel, not highlights, low light plays.
Yeah.
And that's what got posted all over the internet. But he actually didn't play that poorly besides those low light plays, which, whatever. But I mean, yeah, that's exactly what we expect out of Malik Nabers. He's the Giants' only playmaker. Saquon Barkley is gone. They don't have anything else that they can, dependable at wide receiver. It looks like they might start a 4th-round rookie at tight end in Theo Johnson. Like Malik Nabers is going to get the ball a ton. You can, don't dock him too much because of his quarterback situation. Like the ball is he's going to get the ball in his hands in creative ways. That's what Brian Daboll can do.
For sure. Yeah. And we talked about Nabers a bunch more in the ideal round by round show. All right. Story 13. I was at the actual NFL football game. This was the first time I went to an NFL football game in probably, 15 years or something like that. Went to the Broncos preseason game. After that game, Bo Nix was named the starter. No surprise whatsoever. On the preseason, Bo Nix has gone 23 of 30 for 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, has also run for 29 yards. He also threw a touchdown to Javonte in that game that I was at, but it got called back because he was past the line of scrimmage when he threw it. Now, I know this is against all backups, but Bo Nix looks very good. Evan, do you have any hope that's sticky to the regular season, and any more Broncos thoughts?
Yeah, and I think that he looked better in his second game than he did in his first, and he was pretty efficient in his first. In his first, he looked a little nervous coming out at the start, and he was moving when he wasn't pressured. And I think that he looked more confident back there in his second game. So, look, I know he's one of your highest owned quarterback. I mean, I'm sure that you've been getting him really, really late. You got to feel really good about that. Him locking in the starting job, at this point. I mean, it's fairly early for him to do that. He didn't even need the third game.
Well, I think he has more rushing upside than people think.
Yep.
And this like short, quick hitting pass game that Sean Payton's trying to get them to execute and throw to running backs a ton, it can work. You know, it can work as your quarterback 3 in best ball stuff. The stuff that I am frustrated with is that I took a lot of Bo Nix early, like round 20, and I had a lot of it with Mims or Troy Franklin or Estime. And I just got this all wrong, at least for week 1, because it looks like I'm real confident after watching. They're going to go with Tim Patrick, who I can't believe is healthy, but Tim Patrick, who hasn't played since 2021, is back, caught 4 balls from Nix in that game. Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, and then Josh Reynolds coming on in 3 wide receiver sets. And they even played little Jordan Humphrey. Like, they seem to just hate Mims, you know, and which I don't understand. They seem to just hate him. So all my stacks are messed up. But as of now, I think Patrick, Sutton, Reynolds will be the 3 wide receiver set. And at running back, I think it'll be Javonte as the clear early down back. Estime is only the strict backup there. And then McLaughlin for some pass down stuff, also some change of pace stuff, kind of a Sproles-like role. I think it'll be mostly Javonte and McLaughlin to start the season. 2 running backs back there, not 3 for a team that will throw a ton to the running back position. So I thought all that was notable. But yeah, Evan, I think you're getting higher on Javonte, if I'm not mistaken. And we've actually given him a bump as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's a player that is now very, squarely within a draftable range in my rankings. I think he's got a chance at 250 plus carries behind a pretty good run blocking offensive line in an offense where I think that they're going to be fairly efficient on the ground. So, and he can catch passes. Javonte Williams should be able to give you a lot of volume, and he's pretty cheap still in drafts.
For sure. Quick one. I don't think we need to discuss it. We discussed it last week, but again, Tank Dell was the 3rd wide receiver, at least in terms of snap count and route count for the Texans. So far this preseason, Stroud's played 23 snaps, Tank Dell only 14, Nico Collins 21, Steph Diggs 18. Just like we talked about last week, like, I don't want to overreact to this. Tank Dell is an absolute baller who's going to have huge games. I'm still happy to start Tank Dell. I just think people need to be aware that at least as of now, he is theoretically their number 3 wide receiver. We did not make any moves in the rankings for that. Let's go to story 16. We did give James Conner a ceiling boost because Trey Benson once again didn't play on pass downs. I know we hit this last week. Trey Benson looked much better in week 2, but still no pass downs. And so if he's not going to steal there, well, maybe James Conner just has a bigger ceiling than we were giving it credit for coming off of such a good year. So we did give James Conner a little bit of a boost there. Evan, where are you at on James Conner right now?
I haven't adjusted him. I didn't really anticipate Trey Benson jumping into passing down situations, though, as a rookie. I mean, by nature, NFL coaching staffs almost never trust rookie running backs to come in and play on passing downs initially. They don't trust them to pass protect. It's almost like a tradition. I mean, I think that they want to make sure that the rookies learn the running scheme first and foremost. And, James Conner is an experienced pass protector, experienced pass catcher. Trey Benson was really explosive in the receiving game in college. In both of his seasons at Florida State, he averaged over 11 yards per reception. He had 20 catches last year. That's not a ton, but it's not a terrible number. And I mean, he is definitely a capable receiver, but that's not going to be part of his, job description coming out of the gate for sure.
Yeah. Evan is at 81 overall in his top 150 on James Conner compared to 75 overall on Javonte Williams, and also has Zamir White and Tony Pollard in that range as well. And those guys are available reasonably late if you go with the barbell strategy we've talked about at the running back position. Story number 17. Taysom Hill, once again, had absurd preseason usage. And Yahoo just announced today that they have given Taysom Hill tight end eligibility. And so now in all redraft formats, or at least the most popular ones, you can play Taysom Hill at tight end. Now, this preseason usage that I'm talking about, he's played 20 snaps, almost all with the starters, running back 9 times, inline tight end 7 times, slot twice, wide twice. On Saturday, they gave him 5 handoffs. He turned that into 21 rushing yards and a touchdown. Given the lack of weapons on this team, given the running back situation, and Dennis Allen hates everyone. He hates Kendra Miller. He hates everyone on the team. But he only has good things to say about Taysom Hill. So I get why people are like, maybe I can draft Taysom Hill and start him as my tight end in fantasy. I have some thoughts on that, but Evan, what do you think about Taysom Hill as a starter in season long at tight end?
Well, I don't think he's going to catch many passes.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to rely on. I think he's going to be really inconsistent. He's going to be a touchdown or bust player week to week. When he does score a touchdown, he's going to pay off. When he doesn't, if he gets 5 carries for 21 yards but no touchdown and 1 catch for 7 yards, like that ain't helping you. So it's just going to come down to touchdowns, and when he scores, he's going to be a hit, and when he doesn't, he's going to hurt you.
Classic better and best ball to me for the points that Evan is making here. The most likely outcome, even in a good case scenario, I think Taysom's outcome is like 5, 6, 7 carries per game and maybe a target or 2. That's just not enough given the state of the tight end position now, where, I mean, you can get Brock Bowers or David Njoku or Dallas Goedert really late. I mean, Evan Ingram goes late-ish also. And so I think it's a priority for me to get one of those guys rather than leaving it to Taysom. In best ball, yes, he's going to have a few 20-point games this year. I'm confident in that. He's going to have a few multi-touchdown games this year. Predicting those is going to be really hard, though, and why I would say he's better in best ball. Let's go to, the Bears stuff. Again, Cole Kmet was behind Gerald Everett. Now snaps are 29-19 on the preseason. Gerald Everett over Cole Kmet. I get it that Shane Waldron loves Gerald Everett. I just think the talent gap there is so wide that Cole Kmet's eventually going to win out. I would not take Cole Kmet in redraft, but he's starting to slip really far in the best ball stuff, down to like 160. Evan, any thoughts on the Kmet versus Everett battle we didn't know that we had?
Yeah, I mean, I'm buying it. And that's even with guys like JT O'Sullivan, who examines every Bears play during the preseason, talking about how Cole Kmet looks more explosive just as a runner than he ever has. Looks like he shed a little bit of weight. Cole Kmet's a really good athlete. He actually wasn't just a football player at Notre Dame, also played baseball at Notre Dame. Notre Dame has really good baseball. And he this is like the most athletic that he's ever looked, according to JT O'Sullivan. Again, that connection to Shane Waldron, that kind of thing matters. Shane Waldron feels like he can trust Gerald Everett. He's never coached Cole Kmet up until this point in his career. So I'm buying it, at least to begin the season. I'm buying that there's going to be a rotation. I think that Cole Kmet will outproduce Gerald Everett, but Gerald Everett is going to play enough to hurt Cole Kmet.
Yeah, totally fair. Okay, other Bears story, Fat Keenan. 25-18 over Rome Odunze in snaps this preseason. I know you made a move, though, in the top 150. I mean, we kind of poo-pooed this Fat Keenan stuff last week. After looking about it more, I think both of us got a little bit more concerned. Updated thoughts on the Fat Keenan saga?
Well, he looks terrible. And it wasn't just the first preseason game. It was the second preseason game as well. He looks like a little tight end. He's old, and Matt Harmon. We had Matt Harmon on, and he thought that he was, he's losing juice as a route runner. He's certainly losing juice, and he's never been a fast player.
Yeah,
he came out of Cal running 4.7, so it's a big concern. Whereas Rome Odunze has looked awesome in the preseason. And so I moved up Odunze and I moved Keenan Allen down.
Yeah, Evans at 83 overall on Rome and 72 overall on Keenan. My defense of Keenan, maybe he just doesn't care about the preseason. Like, why go out there and bust your ass? You're 32 years old. But that's not really how the way these NFL guys think. So I don't want that to be like a cop-out for Keenan. I'm certainly a little bit worried at this point, mainly because, like, I love Rome. And even if Keenan wasn't fat, maybe Rome's just better than Keenan at this point in their careers right now, even if he wasn't fat. So, yeah, we've docked Keenan a little bit as well. In the story number 20, Xavier Worthy, 13 routes on 14 Mahomes dropbacks Saturday. I know this is not a surprise. I just wanted to highlight this because last year, the Chiefs eased in Rashee Rice massively. I do not think they're going to do that this year with Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy looks incredible. Caught a long touchdown from Carson Wentz here in this game. Xavier Worthy's steam is out of control. He's going to start going very, very high. But as we talked about on, God, we've done so many shows. I can't remember which one. But there was a show where I don't want to overthink this on Xavier Worthy. Like, fast player in the NFL, can run routes, and is with Patrick Mahomes. Let's not overthink this. So, and I think he's going to play right out of the gate a ton. So, yeah, I just want to note that. Anything else for you, Evan, on Xavier Worthy preseason stuff.
Just the amount of separation that he has been able
Yeah.
to create. I mean, he gets wide open, and Mahomes doesn't miss those. He doesn't even need to fit it into a tight window. On the other side, Hollywood Brown probably going to miss the first one or two games, and it's going to be Justin Watson, we think,
Yes.
opposite him. And Justin Watson has always struggled to earn targets. Just probably going to end up being a wind sprint guy. Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, have a chance to come out real hot.
Yeah. Really looking forward to that first game against the Ravens. That's going to be an awesome game. All right, a couple small ones here before we wrap up. Story number 21. Just wanted to update the Chargers backfield situation. So Kimani Vidal got healthy, finally, got back in the preseason game and played well. And now Daniel Popper is projecting Kimani Vidal to make this team. He's projecting them to keep 4 running backs now. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Jared Patterson, and Kimani Vidal. So again, if you're in a deeper redraft league, taking someone like Vidal, see how it shakes out week 1 or 2. If it's deeper, I think it's sharp. Yeah, Evan, I'm not sure if Vidal made his way back in the top 150 or not. Oh yeah, he is in there at 149 overall. So
okay, yeah. Did he slip back in there? I didn't do that on purpose. It's just some guys when you start pulling guys out,
yeah,
like, oh well, he definitely doesn't belong in. Then guys will slide back in. That's fine.
yeah, 149 for Evan on Vidal. Yeah, any more thoughts on Chargers backfield?
I just think it's still wide open. Like we have very, very few answers. I think that Gus Edwards is the favorite to lead the team in carries, coming out the gate, but Vidal could become a factor at some point. Probably has the highest. Well, I think J.K. Dobbins has the highest ceiling of everyone. It's just we have major concerns about his ability to stay healthy. But after him, like let's say he goes down, then I think Vidal can become a factor.
Last story to get to, number 22. Looks like Tank Bigsby has cleanly won the running back 2 job for the Jaguars. Now, I want to couch this by saying at this time last year, we were sitting here and coaches were, oh, we love Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby is awesome. He's going to be the RB2. We're going to spell Travis Etienne with him. He was one of the worst running backs in the league on his chances and just was dead. So it's kind of a bit of deja vu for me, but it does seem like he's going to enter the season as the running back 2. He is into the top 150 at 146 overall as Tank Bigsby. Do you think this year is different for Tank's Bigsby, Evan?
I was one of the guys who thought that he was going to be, the Jaguars themselves
Yep.
thought that he was going to play a fairly significant role last season. He loses a fumble in the preseason finale, loses another one in week 1, and goes in the doghouse. We don't see him. When we do see him, he's out here dropping passes, averaging, I think, under 3 yards per carry. But they really like him. Like they really like him internally. He's going to get this opportunity again. It's going to come down like, can he hold on to the football? Can they trust him? They certainly want to trust him. And they know that Travis Etienne, on that massive workload that he had last year, wore down to the point where he was ineffective for long stretches.
Yeah.
So they know that they need another guy.
Yeah, Bigsby is like a round 20 guy, round 19 guy that I'm okay with at this point in the best ball stuff, as like it's getting really thin back there, but I'm not like excited about it. But I agree that they want to give Travis Etienne breathers. Bigsby just has to not be completely incompetent. All right, that is going to do it for this rankings change and news reactions show. Appreciate you all being here all week for all of these shows. Be sure you are subscribed on our YouTube. It is indeed free. Just put up some videos that do not hit this podcast feed, like a draft strategy video from me, and we have some others up there as well. The FFPC 2K main event show will be up later this weekend by Sunday night. If you have not picked up the best ball, the draft kit, or your bundle yet, it is indeed time. Again, the season starts in just 2 weeks. For Evan, producer Ryan, producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.